Hey, and welcome back to part 3 of creating your custom monster. I had to delay the creation of this video for a bit because of Minecraft Live. Whenever Minecraft releases something new, I always want to make sure that if they are adding something new, that I can inform you of any major changes that might occur in Blockbench, for example, as this has happened before, especially with the Warden, and I'll get more into that a bit later down in the video. But for the subject of part 3, we are going to animate the mob. And in order to do this, I want to make sure that everyone understands that they have their access or pivot points in the correct area. If you did watch the first video, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. So if I click on my left leg of the monster right here, and I click on left front leg, and then I go on to pivot point, as you can see, my pivot point is exactly where I want it. And now the reason we're doing that is because whenever we do animate it, this is where it's going to look for the axis. And anytime we move it, it's going to move around that axis. So make sure it is in the proper pivot point, or else it may just look a bit janky. But now that we have that settled, one thing we're going to do before we actually get into it is we are going to create a new group. We're going to name that group hitbox, and then I'm just going to create a cube inside that hitbox, and I'm just going to rename it the same thing. And this is going to be the mob's hitbox. I can click on the cube and the hitbox at the same time, and here I'm actually going to resize it, as you want the hitbox to at least fill in a good portion of the mob. Typically, it's recommended to have the hitbox as the same size. So as you can see here, mine's not going to be a full exact size of the mob, but at least from my own experiences, I've never truly had any issues with the hitboxes being a different size. But if you ever do, I do recommend it lowering the size of it and just setting it to be exactly the same. And you can see that right here on size. Mine's a 37, the height's 38, and the z-axis is a 45. So there's nothing similar to those numbers at all. I could switch this one to a 38, but I'm not going to do that. So again, if you ever have any issues, especially how the mob walks and if it's going in circles too much, try changing the hitbox and make sure it's all one size. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and click on the cube, and then I'm going to go textures and make sure it's transparent. And just like that, we have the hitbox. So anywhere in this region, if a arrow hits, if the player punches, that's where the effect is going to go to. And this is a standard even for just regular Minecraft mobs. But now that we got that settled, we're actually never going to be using this again. You can create sub hitboxes, for example, if you have a floating mob. And again, I'm only going to do this for tutorial purposes, so you can ignore it if you're not doing this type of thing. So let's say that this head right here is a floating head. I don't know why, maybe you just have a different type of monster, but you already have a main hitbox here. You can create sub hitboxes where you can move it and align it correctly to that area. So even if the player hits it, it will be registered. Now, I'll leave a link for the actual wiki page so you can look more into that. I'm not going to be explaining too much in this video. However, let's go and start on the actual anime. This part is going to be rather short, mainly because I can't really truly teach you guys animating. Same way I can't really teach you guys texturing. I can teach you what's happening here, but it's more onto you guys if you really want to learn that animate state. But I will teach you what you need to know about it. Please note that I am not a master on this. Again, compare it to what other animators have done and features that I didn't even know possible in Blockbench. There are tons of other artists out there that do a much better job than I ever done on animating, and they do certain features that I didn't even know were possible. But I'm teaching you guys the basics of what you can do. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is create an animation, because the way it is right now, we can't do anything. If I try to even move something, it's just going to appear with an arrow right here. You have to select an animation to do this. Now we're going to click add animation on the top left, and we're going to create the animation name. So for this one, I'm going to call it idle. And here we have the loop mode. We could set it up to play once. We could set it up to hold on last frame, or even loop. I rarely use hold on last frame, and I haven't used loop in a while, primarily because I've been looking into the game and seeing exactly what may happen in certain occasions, but I'll get more into this one in a bit. Let's go ahead and do play once, because on idle, it's just going to loop nonetheless, as that it's just looking for the Minecraft's default state. So on idle, I'm going to click confirm, and just like that, now we can actually move the mob around. Now, I wouldn't recommend just doing that straight up. Usually I have a predefined move list that I want to create for the monster, but I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the rest that you can create. There are actually 4 different default states that you can create for it, and this is what Model Engine will identify within the actual game and not make you do any extra work for it. So there is walk, which we're actually going to have to do, so I'll do play once as well. And for the next state, we're going to do jump. I'm also going to set that as to play once. and we have def. So if I remove that, def, play once as well. And a new one that I wasn't aware of, and this is where the warden came in, which was spawn. I'm not going to play around with that. I might try this one out for this video, but we'll see how that one goes. So again, play once, and I'm going to click confirm. Now these are just the default states, but of course you're going to want more. Now you can create another default state, which is attack, but typically when you're going to create a monster in such a large scale, you want more than just one moveset. So if you create one with just attack, that's what it's going to use. But I need other states, so I'm not going to create attack, but I'm going to create a different moveset. So I'm going to do slam, bite, and dash. These are all the default states that we have within the game, and these are 3 additional ones that I'm creating that are separate from the game, and we're gonna have to code in later down the line. I'm actually gonna create one more, and this one's called rock. So I have 4 different states that I need to animate. This is such a long process, so I'm gonna try my best to do all of it. Now, for the custom animation states that we just created, typically what I have to do is I'll go into the actual animation, and then I will make sure that override is set to true, and this is primarily because since there's already a default state in Minecraft, I need to ensure that my animation is going to override the animation that's currently happening. So I'm just going to set all of them to override to ensure, again, that it will occur within the game. This animation will appear. But now for this actual tutorial, I'm only going to teach you guys mainly 2 animation states because everything else is just the same thing. So if I teach you one here, you're going to do the same thing on every other animation state. You're just going to create how you want the mob to move. Now I'm going to go ahead and just animate mainly the idle. That's a simple one to start with, and I'm just going to make him sort of having a breathe effect. I want his body to look like he's alive. So we'll go into body, which is his body folder right here. This is also the same thing here. As you can see, this is where his cubes are. We're not going to be seeing the cubes because you cannot animate cubes. And we have 3 sets of animation types here. We have rotation, position, and scale. And for scale, we can't use it as of now. Scale will require a model engine to support it, and at the moment it doesn't support. I have heard news that it will support it later down the line, but as of right now, it does not work. And when it does, I'll create a more of a short video explaining how scale works. But if you do understand what scale is, it'll basically just give you the ability to change the size of the mob. That would be really cool if we had a slime type mob, but due to Minecraft's limitation, it is not possible right now without causing a ton of lag. So we're going to be ignoring scale throughout the entire video. But for the rest, I'm going to go ahead and work with rotation and position. So I have his whole body selected, and you can see everything highlighted in blue. And I want to create just sort of a breathing effect with the mob. And he's just there waiting for anything to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and set a default position for both of them. So right here, this is a keyframe that I just added. And typically what I do is I add a keyframe at the start and usually how long I want the animation to be. So this case, I'm going to make it 2 seconds, and you can see by the time frame up here, and I'll add a default animation or keyframe at the end of it so that whenever the animation is playing, it's going to play the default here and here. But if I click play right now, you'll see that nothing is really happening. And you can also see this blue line on the top. This is identifying how long your animation is going to be. And now let's go ahead and try to add a breathing effect. So I'll go into like 1 second straight up in the middle, and I will just hold shift because that reduces how much the folder will move, or the bones in this case. So if I do without shift, as you can see, it's a bit more jagged compared to just holding shift. It's a lot more fluent. That's a better word to actually use. So I'll actually just lower him by this bit. You can see a ghost effect sort of happening to where the mob last was. So you have an understanding of exactly where you're moving it. So now if I go back and I click spacebar, or you can even just click play right here, you can see he's just sort of breathing, but it doesn't look very alive. So I'm going to change it up just a little bit as well. I can actually add a bit of rotation to him, so whenever he's breathing, I can make him go a little forward, and whenever he's breathing back up, a little more higher, and just like that. It's very simple. Now whenever I'm working on an animation state, I can actually go ahead and just set the loop to true in this case, and then I'll switch it back later. And the reason I just do this is so I can actually see the animation constantly and how it would look well in a loop in the game. It looks all right. It looks still not alive, so I'll switch it up just a bit on rotation. I'll just add a little bit more so that it's not very predictable. You don't have to do it in 2 seconds. This is just what I'm doing for example purposes. And yeah, that just looks a little bit better. And so far, the only thing that's moving is his body, but we want more things moving. So we'll go over to the head now. I'll actually pause the animation, and and I want to mess with his jaw. And for the jaw, we're just going to set a default position again and set the default position at the end of it, or keyframe. I keep on saying position, but it just means keyframe. So if you do get confused, or any technical person out there, I'm deeply sorry. Now for the jaw, I just want him to move. I'm actually gonna do it offset from the 1 second because I don't want his body to always be moving in that exact precision. So it looks and feels a bit random. And I'll just go ahead and open up his mouth a little bit, and that looks fine to me. And then I'm gonna go ahead and click play. And I really like that already. This was so quick, but overall it looks great. However, I don't want his mouth to be opening that quick. So what I'll actually do is take the first rotation position and I'll move it in a bit more. And what I'm doing here, as you can see, it's not here anymore. So what's happening, you may ask? Basically, it's going to do this animation state regardless. This is the default animation state. But since there's nothing before it telling it to do a different one, it's just gonna run the same thing. So I can just move it a bit and work with my keyframes and make it simpler, not having a ton of keyframes out there. So I'm gonna go ahead and click play again, and that again, that's fine. I feel like something's missing here, so I'll move it more to the beginning and see how that looks instead. And I'll make it a little bit slower since it's mainly supposed to be him breathing. And to me, that looks fine. Again, you can create it how you want to. Personally, I would create it up to 4 seconds just so there's a bit more randomness, but it definitely does a job for right now. I'm not gonna be moving the legs. I think this state is more than enough for what's happening here, especially since it's just supposed to be idle. So I think this animation state is perfect. All right, so let's work on the slam. And for the slam, I'm going to basically make it so his body goes all the way up and then all the way back down. And to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just start with the keyframe. So his body is 1 keyframe, and I want this to be roughly, again, 2 seconds. And I'll add a default keyframe back so he's back to his original position once he's done. And what I'm gonna do is just drag his body high up like that. That looks good enough to me. And I'm doing that around half a second. So it's gonna be a rather quick one, and I'll move it a little bit more since I don't want it to be too quick. Now, as you can see, it's moving rather slowly. So this is when you really need to decide on timing. And I decided on 2 seconds, but I'm gonna have to revert that and probably go down to 1 second and maybe 20. And I'll actually reduce the time here as well. Since it won't do that automatically, it will do it if you expand the time, but not if you reduce the time. So I can reduce that even more. I want this to be quite a fast animation since it's going to be an attack, and I think that's fine. I can increase it later if I have anything I want to do with that, but for now I can add an animation state to the leg. And what I want to do here is move his leg up just like that, and then I'll have to move it quite a bit because it's not connected to his body, so I'll have to do some more positioning regarding it. I'll go ahead and copy the default state and put it back, and that actually was than I expected. I'm going to do something else where I'll copy that and paste it into his right leg, and there you go. Both of the legs are doing the same thing. Kind of looks like a funky dance. But what I'm going to do is make it a little bit unsynced, so I can make this one happen a little earlier so it just doesn't look like it's always the same thing. And I will want it to look like he actually put effort into that slam. So I'll go back into his body, and then I'll change the rotation and move it forward so it looks like he put a lot of effort and his body went down at the same time. So hopefully this isn't too confusing, but then after that I want the default states back, so we'll add it a bit more spread out, and yeah, there we go. Of course it doesn't look like much in the animation state, but in the game we could add particle effects. We'll make them give you damage and particle effects, so that should be easy enough. Again, I'll add a bit of rotation so it doesn't look so even, and I can even change that in here. I think I did a little too much on this one, so I'll do Control Z on that and just change it by ever so much. It doesn't need to be wild, even though it is a wild monster. Again, I'll add a state to his mouth just so it looks like he's actually yelling while he's doing this. And I'll put it back to normal as I don't want it as much. And I can even copy and paste this again. And what it's going to do is make it so he opens his mouth twice actually. And I do want it a little spread out, so I'll create the keyframes again so I can have some more time here so he doesn't open immediately right after. And let's go ahead. I really do like that. I'm genuinely surprised. I'm going to reduce the amount that it opens at the second time because it's a little too much and it'll look like it looked like it may just clip for the ground. And yeah, that looks perfect to me. I can add an animation to his hind legs, and I'll probably do that just in case, just so it doesn't look like it's not doing much. And I'll just add a bit of rotation to it and put it back to normal once it's done. And I'll copy that over again to the other leg. I'm not going to worry too much about sync here since it's not going to be noticed as much, but you can see there's a small issue here that it's going to the same direction. So I'll have to go in manually and actually fix that. And that's easy enough just by putting it into a separate rotation. I'll copy that and paste it here. And just like that, I really do like this. This is a simple animation and it gets the job done. Overall, that's really what I can show you here, and I'm sorry it's a short video. I know you guys have been waiting this for a bit, but again, I really wanted to provide you that information that I had regarding Minecraft. But again, it's after teaching you guys these two simple ones, the rest is the same thing. There isn't much I can do here. I can drag the video on and get that ad revenue, but it wouldn't have a purpose and I'll be wasting your time and my time. But hopefully you guys loved this video and found it informative. By the next video, I'll have all the animations done, and then we're going to be going straight into adding the creature into our game and setting it up in there. Hopefully, again, if you liked the video, make sure to leave a like. These videos take a while to record. And if you know anything or if I did anything incorrect, please let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear that. Better to correct myself than making errors. But if there's any questions, again, ask. I've been seeing so many people communicate with one another, and it's an amazing community we're creating here. So I like it when I see other people helping others in the comment section, as I might not always be available. But again, thank you for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers.